Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett. Tony Kinnett.
Tony Kinnett.
Host of the Tony Kinnett cast.
Let's get down to business.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV.
Here on the Daily Signal.
Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WYBC. It is good to be with you this evening. There are a few updates that we need to dig into before we get to kind of the rest of the show. We understand at the present time that the Border Patrol agents have reported no casualties in a firefight, realistically, between what are suspected to be Mexican drug cartel members who Border Patrol agents reported appeared to be smuggling individuals. It's unknown what these individuals were as far as whether they were members of the cartel, whether they were those who had paid the cartel for services, whether they were part of perhaps sex or human trafficking, but near Fronton, Texas. Fronton, Texas, if you recall, is a place along the Texas-Mexico border in which there is a small island strip in the river that has been a serious point of contention. In fact, not too long ago, the Texas government actually had to launch a small-scale operation to take Fronton Island back from the Mexican drug cartels. Today, Border Patrol agents reported that they were fired on by at least two individuals from the Mexican cartel. They returned fire, which, by the way, that in and of itself is a change in policy. That is a change in policy since President Donald Trump has, in fact, labeled the Mexican drug cartels, as well as the Central and South American drug cartels, as foreign terror organizations. Now, the U.S. Border Patrol reports that though none of them were struck by rounds from the cartels, they don't believe that they were able to hit or at least down any of the members of the cartel either. At this time, we believe that there are members of the Mexican military that are patrolling in armed vehicles. In fact, if you look up the event right now, you'll see people showing pictures of individuals in technical trucks. Those are trucks with machine guns mounted on the top, SUVs, colored a deep shade of green, likely to be the Mexican military. Shine Bomb's regime in Mexico is already a failed state, and this prompts a couple of important questions, at least as far as how the United States responds from here. Firing on members of the United States on their own side of the border, no less, is an act of war. That is an act of war by independently operating states, such as the Sinaloa drug cartel. I've said it before, it is going to be said again, I'm sure, by many that are much more qualified than I am. The United States must do far more than simply build a wall. The threat to our southern border would never have been tolerated at any other point in American history. And that in the past, when there have been foreign threats that have cost the lives of Americans, whether they were by Comanche tribes, whether they were by terror organizations or radical organizations through the multiple different administrations, either associated or not associated with the government of Mexico, the United States went in and they removed the threat. Now, when I say removing the threat, I'm not talking about some type of permanent occupation, instilling a little democracy that springs from the souls of men. No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about removing the threat. And given the way this administration is going, given the way that Secretary of Defense Hegseth appears to be moving, there might, in fact, be a far more official response. We'll get to that in just a minute. First, this is also just coming off the Senate floor. Scott Bessent has been confirmed as the next Secretary of the Treasury. There were 68 votes in favor of Scott Bessent, 29 against. You may have guessed that the far more socialist members are very upset. Again, because although Scott Bessent fits the DEI qualifications and that he is a gay man, he also happens to be extremely qualified for the position. The socialist members of the Democrat Party voted against him because Bernie Sanders could not tolerate someone who believes in capitalism. And so they, voted against him, but Bessent sailed through quite easily. Also, over the weekend, Pete Hegseth was confirmed as the Secretary of Defense, and J.D. Vance, actually, we had just finished the show, It was still up in the air on Friday which Republican senators were going to vote yes, which were going to vote against. And we ended up seeing on the floor of the United States Senate, Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, and Mitch McConnell of Kentucky vote against Pete Hegseth, making it a 50 in the affirmative and 50 against Pete Hegseth. Lisa Murkowski, who is an awful senator, as we'll get to in just a little bit, she didn't really give a good reason. And by the way, that's not punditry. She really gave no decent reason as to why she didn't vote in favor of Hegseth. Collins gave kind of an answer that she thought there were a lot of questions unanswered. McConnell just said he wasn't qualified. Establishment GOP thinking someone isn't qualified, but still voting for Democrats. Day ending and why. And that brings us to Vice President and President of the Senate, J.D. Vance. Showed up to the Senate exhausted and exasperated, at least by the sound of his voice, and broke the tie in favor of Pete Hegseth. Here's what that looked like.
All right. Are there any senators in the chamber who wish to vote or change a vote? If not, on this vote, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 50. The Senate being equally divided, the Vice President votes in the affirmative, and the nomination is confirmed.
So moving forward from there, Hegseth, of course, gave a confirmation speech, and this is where it ties in quite clearly to how the United States Department of Defense is going to completely change. And I don't mean change as in enter a new era of something we've never seen before, but enter into a more World War II style, common sense orchestrated, before the ages of diplomatic this and diplomatic that style military, the peace through strength narrative. Here is Hegseth at his confirmation.
We don't want to fight wars. We want to deter them, as you said, and we want to end them responsibly. But if we need to fight them, we're going to bring overwhelming and decisive force to close with and destroy the enemy and bring our boys home.
That's exactly what one should want their Secretary of Defense to act like. Instead of, telling us about all of the wonderful equitable things they're going to do, or, going AWOL for a little bit of a prostate surgery here and there. Then, of course, Kristi Noem confirmed as the Department of Homeland Security Secretary. Also this week, Tulsi Gabbard, Kash Patel, and RFK Jr., their confirmation hearings are being served up. And it is going to be a wild week on the floor of the Senate. We'll cover that a little bit later. Kylan, before we get to Colombia, I'm going to need a little authentic Colombian music. Do we have anything like little Colombian guitar out there? So, Senor Donald Trump, he began ordering deportation flights of individuals convicted of violent crimes like rape and theft auto and capital murder and other things of that nature. And so ICE went in to targeted areas and removed these individuals and started sending them back to their country of origin, like Colombia. President of Colombia, Senor Petro, was not particularly pleased, being on the very far left and not wanting these individuals back in his country. He said he would be rejecting the flights, and that caused a bit of a problem. So he got on Twitter, and he gave this long, rambling letter, which I will now read to you. Trump, I don't really like traveling. It's a bit boring. But I confess there are some commendable things. I like going to the black neighborhoods of Washington, where I saw an entire fight in the U.S. Capitol between blacks and Latino barricade, which seemed like nonsense to me, because they should join together. I confess that I like Walt Whitman and Paul Simon and Noam Chomsky. And he then continues on by talking about his gastritis, talks about trying to carry out a coup with economic strength and arrogance, talks about Italian Tuscany and being saved from COVID. Very normal people. You know what? I think we can go ahead and cut the Colombian music there, Kylan, because then from a golf course, Donald Trump issued his response. I was just informed that 2 repatriation flights from the U.S. with a large number of illegal criminals were not allowed to land in Colombia. This order was given by Colombia's socialist president, Gustavo Petro, who is already very unpopular amongst his people. Then Donald Trump directs his administration to take the following actions. Number 1, emergency 25% tariffs on all goods coming into the United States. And then, in 1 week, 25% tariffs up to 50%. And a travel ban and immediate visa revocations on all Colombian government officials, all Colombian allies, and all supporters. Visa sanctions on party members, family members, and supporters of the Colombian government. Enhanced customs and border protection inspections of all Colombian nationals. It is amazing. He just goes on and on about things from a golf course. And that's where absolutely everything goes upside down. We're going to go into that on the live stream in a minute. For those of you on the radio, we'll be back in just a second to talk a little bit about some of the other illegal immigration actions and reactions across the country. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast.
Are you thinking this year I want to...
All right, now that the commercial radio people are off there, let's talk about some of the response, because the takes from the left at Trump announcing tariffs and visa revocation and all other kinds of what essentially are sanctions against the Colombian government for rejecting repatriation flights from the United States are fantastic. So you have Ana Navarro, who says, most flowers are imported to the U.S. They come from Colombia. Like, happy Valentine's Day, America. You've got Harry Sisson saying that, oh, you know, Trump is going to make everything more expensive, and AOC is talking about making every American pay more for coffee. Oh, it's so terrible and mean and stinky. And then everyone is so mad at Donald Trump. They're saying, oh, his tariffs, they're not going to work this time. You Americans thinking you're so smug. Donald Trump is going to crash the economy on coffee and flowers, and oh, he's so mean. Exactly 1/2 hour later, President Petro of Colombia starts the reneging process and then clarifies, well, of course, you know, he would allow Colombian citizens to, you know, land. They just should be treated with dignity or whatever. And then 2 hours after Trump makes his tariff and visa change threats, the office of the presidency announced not only would he be completely capitulating to everything, but the official statement from the Office of the Presidency of Colombia says, President Gustavo Petro provides his presidential plane for the dignified return of his fellow citizens and will lead efforts to work with the United States. Fantastic. And then all of those tweets about how Donald Trump's tariffs on Colombia were going to wreck coffee prices and flour prices were deleted so fast you'd think it was a group photo with Joseph Stalin. And it was just absolutely fantastic. Then, as if that wasn't good enough, Donald Trump then posts a Grok AI generated picture on Truth Social of himself in a pinstripe suit, red tie, and a fedora, with behind him like a telephone pole with a sign on it that says FAFO, bleep around and find out, with a smiley face underneath it. Fantastic. When I went, by the way, on a news show today to talk a little bit about Donald Trump and these tariff actions and how American foreign policy appeared to be moving towards the peace through strength kind of a situation, well, I was a little shocked to hear that even the Democrat that I was on the panel with, was in favor of the tariffs and was like, yeah, I mean, it seems like whatever Trump is doing right now is working. There's no reason to complain. Yeah. So fantastic stuff. It really is a wild time to be in the United States and to watch the Trump administration. We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
Before I got jacked, I was on the same track. Back up.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. It's just funny. I mean, realistically, if you look at this as an outsider, and believe me, we'll talk a little bit about how the foreign pearl clutching is at its height. I talked with a friend of mine, though, this afternoon in France, who is watching all of this happen in the United States, and they're mystified. They're mystified that there could be an outrage to what Trump is doing right now. And I got to be honest with you, a lot of people in the United States feel that way. Donald Trump is enjoying the highest approval rating he has ever enjoyed at all in politics, over 60%. And growing, which at this point, if you're still like undecided on Donald Trump, if you're still leaving some things here and there, just kind of out in the mist, all I can say is that this is I don't know how you could be undecided on Donald Trump at this point. But my, oh my, the libs are just losing it, because there is this idea with regard to Donald Trump unleashing the Immigration Customs Enforcement Agency through guys like Border Czar Tom Homan, who is just a 100% excellent dude. There's this idea that the left has tried to perpetrate around American society that, oh, this is going to be super terrible and super evil, and this is going to result in just the worst stuff ever. I mean, they're going to be busting in like SWAT teams into schools and dragging away any kid that looks brown. And, oh man, they're going to be like grabbing little old ladies off the street. And as one leftist pundit put it, it's like ethnic cleansing all over again. No, it's not. In fact, what we have seen are that through the targeted employment of Immigration Customs Enforcement, individuals who have been charged or convicted of violent crimes, of sexual crimes, you know, the kind of guys like President Biden pardoned, that the individuals who are illegal immigrants who have also been convicted or charged with violent crimes are being captured and then deported to the country they came from. Because you can't say you're a migrant who's come here to escape political persecution if you're going to come to this country and then infringe on others the same kind of persecution that you supposedly escaped from. Now, that's arguing from the left point of view. From the basic understanding of the Constitution, there are individuals waiting to get into this country legally. They are from all over the world. They are from Central and South America, and they have waited in line through this mess of an immigration system that we have. They have come into this country, and then they have gone through the work to become a United States citizen. They are very proud of that, and they should be. You don't get to cut in line. That's not right. That's not fair. But that doesn't stop individuals like Selena Gomez from going on Instagram today and crying into her camera like AOC outside a parking lot in 2018. Crying that, oh, her people are being persecuted. Reminder, no children have been arrested at this point. No one's arresting Granny. All of the illegal immigrants that have been detained so far are those that have been with, aka harboring, or those that are violent criminals. Objectively violent criminals, rapists, child molesters, etc. Here was Selena Gomez, though, throwing a crocodile tear fit about how this is, I don't know, she feels so helpless.
I just wanted to say that I'm so sorry. All my people are getting attacked. Children. I don't understand. I'm so sorry. I wish I could do something, but I can't. I don't know what to do. I'll try everything, I promise.
I'll try and be there, she said from her expensive mansion. I'll try and be there for you. Dabbing my tears with $100 bills. Oh, the children. Won't someone think of the children? Yeah, people are thinking of the children. That's why the child molesters are getting arrested and deported. But anyway, that isn't going to stop the suburban wine moms from going after Tom Homan over on ABC News. Man's just not having it. What an absolute king.
You know that this creates fear in the immigration.
You know. Look at the school marming. Journalisming so hard. You know this is causing fear.
In the immigrant community, the chair of the U.S. Conference of Bishops Committee said turning places of care, healing, and solace into places of fear and uncertainty for those in need while endangering the trust between pastors, providers, educators, and the people they serve will not make our communities safer.
Well, look, here's the thing. If Congress has a job to do, we're enforcing the laws Congress enacted and the president signed. If they don't like it, change the law. I find it hard to believe any member of Congress is telling us not to enforce the law that they enacted and they fund us to do.
But opening up to anyone who's in the country illegally and going into schools and grabbing them, does that, kids, adults?
The message needs to be clear. There's consequences for entering the country illegally. If we don't show there's consequences, you're never going to fix the border problem.
Ding. Bingo. Absolutely correct. And I really do love, oh, then churches and schools. In my church in Newcastle, Indiana, if there was an individual who police had reasonable suspicion was a child molester, if they figured that the best move for them at that moment was to come in during a church service and arrest said individual, I would not feel scared. I would feel safe, because guess what? That's a person no longer walking around as a child molester. Presto, kind of amazing. By the way, as a mandatory reporter when I worked in the education system, my job was to make sure that federal authorities, that state authorities knew if there was someone that I suspected of abusing one of my students sexually, physically, or through neglect. That is required. I would lose my teaching license and possibly be charged if I didn't fulfill that. The best thing about this administration so far, it's kind of a tough debate, but easily in the top 5 is Vice President J.D. Vance. First of all, Vice President J.D. Vance is a very good-looking individual. I can see exactly why Donald Trump chose him on looks alone. But if you set aside choosing a handsome Midwestern man for your vice president, I mean, you'd pick him alone just for going on Sunday news shows and slapping back at these school marms like Vice President Vance did with Margaret Brennan over on CBS. There you go. Here's one of your memes for 2025.
Well, Margaret, I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted.
But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary concern as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country. It's not good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Correct. I don't care. I don't care if it's Saint Teresa herself. I don't care. No, it doesn't work like that. If they have not been vetted or they have been vetted improperly, they should not be here, because we don't know if they're actually Saint Teresa or not. Don't know. And see, it's the knowing that's kind of the important part about the immigration process. That's why you wait in line, so that we can find out if in fact you are beneficial to the country because of what you do and what you believe. I mean, but that's why we've got J.D. Vance. And as long as he's doing Sunday shows, I will absolutely be tuning in. We'll talk about Chinese AI and the stock market here in just a little bit. This is the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal.
AAA not only is the best.
4 years of constant crisis. Wide open borders, deadly fentanyl, violent crime, crippling inflation, war in Israel, war in Ukraine, China rising. There's no time to waste on Washington games. We must fight. Americans elected President Donald J. Trump to stand in the breach. He's already hard at work. If we're going to fight and win, we've got work to do. Confirm Trump's cabinet now.
I'm Bradley Devlin, politics editor of The Daily Signal. I want to invite you to tune into my new show, The Signal Sit Down. For far too long, your political leaders have not represented you in Washington, D.C. Instead, they've chosen to represent themselves, their friends, and powerful interests. On The Signal Sit Down, we'll expose how the sausage really gets made in Washington, D.C. with guests who have experience on the inside. Past guests include Senator Ron Johnson, Congressman Andy Harris, Senator Rick Scott, and Congressman Riley Moore. So check out The Daily Signal's newest show, The Signal Sit Down, on YouTube, or listen to the audio version on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. I'll see you there.
Subscribe to get the news the legacy media won't tell you and only the Daily Signal can bring to you.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. There's a lot of different stories that have had a lot of impact on, international policy, on foreign trade, on the safety of Americans. Of course, there's the situations in California with the wildfire, concerns over insurance issues in Arizona, and possibly another wildfire breakout, maybe due to arson. Of course, we're still cleaning up after Hurricanes Helene and Milton, making sure the individuals that were affected by those storms are getting the care that they need. It goes on and on and on. But something that came out of left field that made a considerable amount of impact today was the announcement of DeepSeek, which China had released, a company out of Guangdong, China. I'm not entirely shocked that it would be out of Guangdong. That is the Chinese kind of Silicon Valley, if we're not explicitly talking about Hong Kong, which the British very stupidly gave back to the Chinese Communist Party. The situation regarding DeepSeek is very interesting because it was announced as this kind of new AI app that everyone was suggesting is somehow a lot better than ChatGPT. Its answers were more thorough and so easy to use, and it was free and wonderful. And it overtook OpenAI on the free sections of the app stores. Everyone was talking about it. And the concerns started flooding in. And there's the political concern, and then there is the economic concern of it. And one of them is overblown, one of them is not. The first and foremost concern is easily the political concern that, unlike just TikTok, which was very likely as owned by the Chinese government, sending your data back to Beijing, this app, DeepSeek, according to their own policy, records everything. Fingerprints, facial scans, iris scans, the keystrokes on your device, not just when the app is open. So let me explain. Let's say that you've shut the app, or at least you think you've shut the app. It may be running in the background, and you're typing something in to someone else. You don't send it. You actually end up deleting what it is that you typed, not really going to type it. The app still records it and sends it back to Beijing. Kind of a problem. Political issues, of course, a lot of censorship. You can tell it to criticize Donald Trump. It'll give you a whole list of reasons why to criticize the American president. You say, criticize President Xi Jinping of China, and it will say, I'm sorry, that's not what I am supposed to do. Let's talk about something else. And we could talk about AI and jailbreaking AI and things like that. Then there is the economic and the technological concern. So China announced that this groundbreaking new amazing AI, which, by the way, had done pretty well on some of the technical specs, on the Math 500 test, it was 97.3% accurate. In Code Forces test, it ranked in the 96.3rd percentile. It's Alpaca Evaluation 2.0. The DeepSeek R1 scored an 87.6%, which is really good. Here's the problem. China said it was developed with just $6 million on far, far, far substandard NVIDIA chips, like way lower performance NVIDIA chips, and was developed in just 2 years. Now, that should raise a red flag for some of you, and allow me to explain why. Anytime a communist government comes up and says, hey guys, I not only did what you stinking dirty capitalist pigs have done, but I've also done so on lots less monies and all the workers very happy. In fact, everyone is very good here in communist country. That should raise a red flag because this has been done before. Okay, now the Soviets, and we've talked about this on the show with Bill Whittle over at the time from the Daily Wire, specifically a couple of great documentaries over there on Foxbat, the MiG-25, in which they had released this amazing jet fighter, and it could go so fast, and its wings looked like it could bank. Really, it was going to be an amazing dogfight fighter, threw the whole country into a tizzy, and ended up creating the F-15 and F-16, the greatest fighter jets ever built. And when we actually got a hold of the MiG-25 Foxbat in Japan because of a Soviet defector, we found out it was a crippling piece of junk. Now, here's my prediction so that when this actually comes true in a couple of months or years, you have this video to look back on, or live stream podcast for those of you that are tuning in on the syndication network. We cannot verify what kind of chips China used to create this AI system. In fact, the United States currently has a very weak export ban that says China is not allowed to receive the current level of NVIDIA chip from the United States. So if, Chinese AI is able to do all of this, a lot of tech stocks were tumbling today. People are worried, thinking NVIDIA's either lost their edge or the new chips aren't as good. It's kind of a problem. I'm telling you, there's something a little fishy here. Because all China has to do is go to a country that they are shipping a lot of resources in and out of, say, Mexico, for instance, and then order these chips off of Amazon and then take them back to China. And then China, which has not showed us where this AI facility is, how many resources it's taking up, or shown us the number of chips in the system that is plugged in, well, we just kind of have to take their word for it. In reality, this is where the prediction comes in. It's far more likely that China has as many of the latest NVIDIA chips as they possibly can, and they have created as big of a system as is feasibly possible for the Chinese to throw into a system. They basically took the idea and the concept of an American AI server, and then they just stapled 2 or 3 of them together. Probably taken up 2 whole cities worth of water to cool it, 3 whole cities worth of power to power it, and a bunch of the new Chinese coal-fired power plants. And it's simply running as quickly as they can. They're overclocking it, in essence, to try to scare the West into thinking that they've somehow blown past us all technologically. I'm sorry, that has never once happened in a Chinese communist government. In fact, it will be the very first time in history that a communist government has produced any kind of technological advancement before Western civilization. Any kind of technological advancement in the computer world before Western power. There are red flags, and not just Mao's red flags, all over this up and down. So before the market and everyone gets really scared thinking, oh, they've blown past us in AI, there are 2 things you need to remember. Number 1, the United States has in fact been playing with one arm tied behind its back. Tied the arm behind its back, Biden. We need to responsibly manage AI and tie everything down. That's ridiculous. American advancement, unfettered, is what produces results. Number 2, I'd like to encourage everyone out there that the Chinese, if they had some kind of a system that truly was better than the rest of the world, they would show that off. They would have pictures of that server farm. They would be showing the tech, illustrating what they could do with these miniatures. They haven't done any of that. Any of that at all. It's just like the Soviet launch, Big 25. Some people are saying this is a Sputnik moment for the United States. And where, oh, wow, the Chinese are blowing past us in technology, and we're going to go right out there and do all of this amazing stuff. No, I think so. Now, should it actually spur Oracle and NVIDIA and Japanese SoftBank to, through the Stargate initiative that Donald Trump is putting together, actually move AI forward? I think so, absolutely. But do I think that the Chinese are now blowing past American infrastructure technology? No. And by the way, as a counter to those who said, well, we really shouldn't care if, the Chinese are stealing our data because after all, the CIA and the NSA and all these individuals are stealing our data and using it and whatnot. That is a false binary argument. Not relevant. And the reason it's not relevant in this particular situation is because what the United States intelligence agencies are using Americans' data for is bad. Absolutely. Don't think they should be stealing Americans' data, shouldn't be spying on Americans at all. Should a foreign power, the number 1 geopolitical foe of the United States, be absorbing Americans' data at Mach 10 so that they can then use that to socially manipulate the infrastructure of the United States, including perhaps fraudulently interfere in future United States elections? Or perhaps commit massive amounts of social fraud? Or let's just say cripple the entire infrastructure of the United States by locking millions, billions of people around the world out of accounts? The flip of a button? A switch? That's a totally different thing altogether. And so when you look at this situation, I can draw one solid principle out of it that I think most people should be able to agree on. That is, Chinese companies should not be allowed to operate in the United States. China should not be allowed to own any land in the United States. If they are a geopolitical foe, they should be treated as a geopolitical foe. Across the board, American companies that do business with China should be monitored for foreign interference. That's common sense. That's how you treat a geopolitical foe. And if you're going to do something that protects Americans, you have to do it across the board and not just with TikTok. It needs to be across the board, and it needs to be done with Americans' best interests at heart. You know, like we did with Colombia. Back in just a second to talk a little bit about Mexican President Sheinbaum, and not to mention a little bit of foreign governmental collusion, maybe, with Alaskan Senator Murkowski. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC.
Pro-life, pro-women, conservative, and feminist. That's right, we're Problematic Women, the show that is made by and for conservative women across America. The radical left doesn't know what to do with strong, independent women who believe in traditional values and love America. So you might say we're problematic to the left's narrative of what a woman should be. Here at Problematic Women, we talk about the issues in the news that you care about, from the politics on Capitol Hill that affect you at home to marriage, health, wellness, and the media. So, Problematic Women, you are invited to grab a cup of tea, pull up a chair, and join us every weekday for some classy, engaging, and sometimes fun conversation. Join Problematic Women on the Daily Signal's YouTube and Rumble every Wednesday, or catch the show wherever you get your podcasts on Thursday morning. And be sure to follow Problematic Women on Instagram.
Subscribe to get the news the legacy media won't tell you and only the Daily Signal can bring to you.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Well, nobody clutches pearls quite like the Europeans. Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. I'm Tony Kinnett. It's good to be with you. I wasn't quite expecting to get just the cream of the crop from some of the foreign leaders, so we'll break it down as easily as we can, just leader by leader. So first of all, Mexican President Sheinbaum, she's really upset. She's really upset because the United States has begun its deportation flights, and Sheinbaum's really aggravated because some of the people that left Mexico who are Mexican citizens are now coming back to Mexico. She has a little something to say about it. Now, I don't have a transcript for this just yet, so I'm going to try to get this to you on air and get a little translation here as she says it. This is the president of Mexico going off and saying some rather interesting things.
Pero que se oiga bien y que se oiga fuerte. Las y los mexicanos allá sostienen la economía de los Estados Unidos, en el campo, en los servicios, en todos lados. Estados Unidos no sería lo que es si no fuera por un pueblo trabajador que se vaya a ayudar. Así que van a recibir siempre nuestro apoyo, nuestra solidaridad, y si regresan a México, regresan con nuestros brazos abiertos para darles todo lo que se merecen, porque son generosos, solidarios, como es el pueblo mixteco y todos los pueblos de nuestro país.
They are generous and supportive, like the Mixtec people. And I think all the peoples of our country is how she finished it. So a couple of things that are a little problematic here, if I got the translation right, which I think I did. She does use the word Mixtec. We'll talk about that in a second. First of all, I do love how she points out that the Mexican people are basically running the bottom half of the U.S. economy, but she doesn't want those people back in Mexico. You can't have it both ways. You can't say, look, the immigrants who left our country to the United States, those are the best people anywhere, and boy, are they going to regret sending them back here. If they were so great in your country, why did they leave? Then she uses the word Mixtec. So Mixtec is a word for basically the indigenous people of the area. Now, there were like 45, 50 different tribes in northern Mexico and the southern United States alone, who she's claiming were all Mixtec, which is, again, just like saying that try equating someone from Korea and someone from Japan and see how that goes in conversation. Probably not too well. But this word Mixtec, used to describe the people who are Hispanic, is a very kind of left-leaning kind of racial signal that there's always going to be this angst and this anger. Oh, the United States is so mean that it conquered the southwestern North American region. Just nonsense. So I got to tell you, not buying it. The pearl clutching ain't doing it for me. If you really did love the people that much, then you wouldn't have to wait until Donald Trump started sending them your way to invite them to come home. In fact, the Mexican government currently has a program that gives an app to people to click if the United States arrests them so that Mexico can send lawyers to the U.S. to defend their illegal immigration to the United States. They don't go telling me about, oh, how wonderful and amazing everyone, oh, they're so wonderful. Don't even want them. You're willing to spend money on lawyers to keep them in the United States. Shut your mouth. Again, the individuals who've been deported so far are those who were present with or those who are charged or convicted violent criminals. Fantastic stuff. That brings us over to the World Health Organization. A lot of people are losing their mind because Donald Trump has ordered the United States to stop cooperating with the World Health Organization. That's a good thing. The World Health Organization has improved 0 things since it became an organization. The United States has bankrolled it since its inception, and the World Health Organization has done very little. When I say very little, I mean it sort of helped distribute polio vaccines in Africa. Also kind of involved with some human experimentation, but if you look past that, they handed out some polio vaccines. Private entities have done more to distribute polio vaccination in Africa, in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and in Central Asia than anyone in the World Health Organization. The United States has no business working with an organization who openly funded and covered for the Chinese Communist Party, who gave us COVID-19 out of their gain-of-function research laboratory in Wuhan. Senator Murkowski from Alaska, because she's all about virtue signaling, I guess. She's going to be the new Adam Schiff. She has released a joint statement with a Danish parliamentarian representing Greenfield, so with Greenland, so foreign government here. The appeal of Greenland is easy to understand. It's strategically located for defense, shipping, and more, and it's a storehouse for all sorts of minerals, the building blocks of society that will determine who leads and who controls the industries of the future. But of course, a businessman turned president would be interested, but Greenland is not for sale. So the rest of this statement basically says that people should not move towards the admission of Greenland into the United States. By the way, over 60% of people in Greenland, according to the latest polls, want to be a part of the United States, because why wouldn't you? Now, Senator Murkowski, working directly with a foreign government to release a joint statement, does violate the Logan Act. From just reading the statement, what is implied in this statement, working with, if she did not receive permission from the United States or notify the United States, then she has effectively engaged in collusion with a foreign government. That's a problem. That is a serious problem. It is wrong when any member of the United States government releases a joint statement. You're not in the State Department. Did Marco Rubio authorize you as the Secretary of State? Did the government of Alaska, which I guess since the 17th Amendment passed, your state legislature wouldn't have to authorize you to work with a foreign government, but did Alaska authorize you to work with Greenland? No, you don't represent the interests of the United States to us. You represent the issues of Alaskans to the federal government. That's how your job works. Forgotten because, of course, we got to get out there and socially preen and tell everyone how wonderful we are. This is not good. Completely honest, if it is indeed a foreign statement in collaboration with another government, in my opinion, that is grounds for impeachment, since we're throwing around the term again. We will be back in just a moment. We're going to talk with a good friend of ours over at the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. Some really great stuff out from Will Estrada, our friend. We'll be back in just a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
If you fall, I will catch you. I'll be waiting.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
Can you will find me?
Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated first on 93 WIBC. It's great to be joined by a friend who I'm not sure we've had on this show, at least yet. but we've had him on back when I was doing chalkboard review stuff quite a bit and couldn't get enough. This is Will Estrada, one of the key dudes behind the Homeschool Legal Defense Association. It's good to have you, man. I know that usually we're laughing in joy about the numerous victories of the school choice and the homeschool movement. Man, how you doing?
I am doing well, Tony. Great to be on, and it's good to see you again.
Absolutely. So normally you and I are, spotting each other at the other side of either education conferences or political conferences, or maybe just some random airport, I think, one time. But I know that you're doing a lot of key work for the homeschool movement. It's grown among all political parties, among all demographics. More parents than ever are turning to homeschooling as an option for their kids. Tell us about some of the biggest victories that we're seeing at the moment.
Absolutely, Tony. So the biggest victory is just the number of homeschoolers and homeschool families. The latest numbers from the U.S. Department of Education, the National Center for Education Statistics, were released in September of 2024. What they said was over 5% of the school-age population is now being educated at home. And both they noted and we note that those numbers are actually low. And the reason is the U.S. Department of Education in many states does not count kids who are being educated at home by their parents using education savings accounts. These are the programs where they can get state funding for them. They don't count them as homeschoolers. So in New Hampshire, in Florida, in Arizona, in other states where there are ESA programs that expand to homeschoolers, those are not counted as homeschoolers. So our estimate is it's closer to 6 to 7% of the school-age population. These are K through 12 kids are being educated by their parents at home. Of course, this is a massive growth post-pandemic. The numbers before the pandemic, so 2019, were about 3% of the school-age population being educated at home. And then, of course, homeschooling is legal in all 50 states. It's growing. Homeschooling really, Tony, is mainstream today.
So when we're going to dig into mainstream education, I want to see mainstream results, right? And I'm not talking about mainstream as in the average result. I mean, if we are going to see a surge of a type of schooling, I want to see the benefits of it. Now, look, coming from me, that's preaching to the choir, because that's what we're going to be choosing to do. We're already trying a few different homeschooling strategies that start down at the toddler age, and that's probably a totally different interview. What are we seeing as far as college acceptance rates, trade school acceptance rates? Are we seeing overall a high level of education, high quality of education coming out of this newer trend of homeschooling, or is it lagging behind a little?
It's very high quality. So I'm a homeschool graduate. My wife and I homeschool our kids. There are now millions of homeschool graduates, and colleges, universities, trade schools, they all overwhelmingly accept homeschoolers. Interestingly enough, really the only place where we still have problems getting homeschoolers into colleges, universities, or higher education programs are the University of California system, so the UC system, the SUNY system, that's the State University of New York system, and then in certain cosmetology schools as well. So that's where it's limited to. Trade schools, we don't have problems. And federal law is very clear. We have worked with the U.S. Department of Education and with Congress for the past couple decades, both Republican and Democrat administrations. And so federal law is very clear that colleges and universities, institutions of higher education that receive federal student aid and are participate in these FSA programs can't discriminate against homeschoolers. So we are excited to be working with the incoming Trump administration to make this even more clear, to once and for all crack down on the SUNY system, UC system, and cosmetology programs that are still discriminating against homeschoolers.
So let's dig into how we can actually make I don't want to say the program more effective, but to make the opportunity of homeschooling more appealing, or perhaps an easier choice for parents to make. There's a federal question in education that usually revolves around the M word, money. We start talking about, well, if we really want this education to flourish, we need to give it lots of money. That may not be particularly the answer for homeschooling. So sorry for the world's most open question on earth, but how do you, from a local policy, a state policy, or a federal policy perspective, how do you assist in giving parents the agency to choose homeschooling in a day and age like today?
Tony, that's a great question. And I always start it with a sobering reminder of what former President Ronald Reagan said. He said the 10 scariest words in the English language are "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you." I think if you technically count them, it's 9 words. And so that really governs the discussion when homeschoolers are talking at the federal, state, and local level. We want the freedom, the constitutional, God-given freedom to be able to educate our children at home, free from government strings and government control. But we also are leery of money, remembering what Ronald Reagan said, that when government says "I'm from the government and I'm here to help you," it might start off good, but it could lead to control down the road. And so when we're having these conversations, we say protect our freedom, eliminate barriers to entry and discrimination, but that's it. We want to be very cautious of any programs that are giving us money or programs that could later on come with strings down the road. Now, I do draw a distinction between tax deductions and tax credits, which allow families to keep more of their hard-earned money, but we want to be very cautious and careful when it comes to vouchers, grants, programs like that.
Right, because those come with their own strings that are often attached to it, and we could dig into that debate. I'm not going to shove us into that, box, at least in this one. See, we do have to have you on the show a little bit more. There's so much to dig into on this. There are different states that are in different places regarding homeschooling legislation. This is one of the things that I don't think a lot of individuals know, is that this is kind of a separate fight from the school choice fight that's happened regarding vouchers or regarding being able to apply credits to various schools, whether it's parochial schools or charter schools, what have you. The homeschooling legislative fight is a bit different in other states, and I know you're out in the Commonwealth of Virginia. What do you guys have going on right now in the fisticuffs of legal and legislative battles for homeschooling?
Well, Tony, we've talked about the good news, but here's the bad news. There are aggressive attempts across all 50 states. There are organizations, Washington Post, ProPublica have been backing this as well, to actually roll back the hard-fought freedom of parents to be able to direct the education and upbringing of their children.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And,
I mean,
I know.
Come on, yeah. Oh, those mean old parents who want to teach their kids themselves. The horror.
It's the struggle is real, Tony, and the biggest battle that we have right now in January of 2025 is here in the Commonwealth of Virginia. A fairly new state senator, her name is Stella Pekarsky. She used to be on the Fairfax County School Board. She just introduced a bill which would completely eliminate the religious exemption option to homeschool in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Now, there are 2 ways to homeschool in Virginia. One is the annual notice of intent. Every year you basically file with the local school district superintendent, you give test scores, that sort of thing. But then Virginia, and this is the home of James Madison, the Memorial and Remonstrance from 1785, 1786, where, we have long protected religious freedom. We have a second option to homeschool in Virginia. It was passed by the first Black governor of Virginia, Doug Wilder, when he was actually in the state legislature. So this dates back to 1976. It's been unchanged since then, and it allows families to basically give a religious letters from their pastor or priest or religious leader, from their friends, attesting to their deeply held devout religious beliefs. And this is not just Christian. It can be Christian, can be Jewish, it can be Muslim, it can be Wiccan, it can really be any faith that you have, but it allows you to claim a religious exemption. So once you receive that, you no longer have to basically get a permission slip from the school district.
In fact, I actually get to jump in with a bit of data that I was looking at last week. I know that Max Eden has transitioned out of his role as CERN director over at AEI, now beginning his work in the Trump administration. He noted, I think, in an earlier report, that Sikh Americans actually have a very high number of homeschooling communities, especially given how kind of up in the air education opportunities over in Turkey, over in the Kurdistani area are. To come to the United States and have the freedom to actually educate your kids here at home is a really attractive prospect for those who follow the Sikh faith. And so it's kind of an interesting little tidbit there.
We actually have a large number of Sikh HSLDA members here at HSLDA, and so that's
didn't plan that actually. That's good to know. I'm sorry I didn't have that plan, but that's That's good to hear.
So Senator Pekarsky has introduced this bill. It's called SB 1031. It already passed out of the Virginia Senate Education Subcommittee. Tomorrow it's going to be on the full Senate Education Committee. So we are working closely with our allies. If you are a homeschooler in Virginia or know a homeschooler in Virginia, politely but respectfully tell your state senator and your state delegate, leave our religious exemption alone. Tony, this is personal to me. My wife and I homeschool our 2 sons in Loudoun County, and we have a religious exemption. So I want to make sure that this is protected for our family, for our children, but also for families and of all faiths and for generations to come in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
I absolutely agree. And just encouraging to see homeschooling parents and those who are interested in it across the country, not only being aware of what it is that they can do with homeschooling, but their legal rights regarding it as well. And that's hslda.org. Did I get that right?
That's it. Yep, we've got information about the bill up there. Governor Youngkin has pledged to veto it if it comes to his desk, but we would like to just kind of stuff this once and for all and just make sure it doesn't even get out of the Virginia Senate.
Absolutely. Will Estrada, always good to have you, man. Take care.
Thank you, Tony.
We'll be back in just a second. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
The Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right. I have finally bowed to the wishes of the producers and some of the comment section here. I will finally I will allow it. We will call the section that airs after 8 o'clock. If I can't stop talking and running my mouth for the day, we will call it Bonus Tonus. Tonus is a name that I was called in high school. Where my Twitter handle and Instagram handle stems from. And I never grew up to make my social media handles my first and last name. So Tonus it is. A little bonus section of the show. We're going to center on 2 things here. One thing that I didn't get to in the foreign pearl clutching. Then we're going to talk a little bit about Trump's conversation to some of the representatives of the Republican House. So first of all, a guy named Glenn Toons, who is a self-described dog lover and a Democrat. So, boy, I'm sure we're already starting strong here. He made a post on the 25th that is peculiar and one of my favorite kind of posts to receive from Europeans. And this would be, as a Norwegian, I just have to say that it makes me so sad to watch what is happening in America. The Republican Party really wants to see America burn.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
I'm going to let you in on a little secret here, Norway. No one in America thinks about you ever, at all. No thanks. Don't care even a smidgen, even a little bit, what the individuals over in Europe have to say about anything whatsoever. Because the United States did everything for you. We rebuilt you single-handedly after World War II. We saved you from World War II. And by the way, may I just keep it perfectly clear here, we are the reason that you're still an independent country today. Do not care, Norway, what you have to say, nor what any European country has to say ever, anytime at all. The hilarity of Americans who are embarrassed in front of the global stage because Republicans and the Trump administration are acting with a spine. That's embarrassing to them. That I guess they're so at home licking boots that they can't help but do so internationally. Maybe they can tell the difference between Italian and Norwegian leather when they're licking boots. So, nah, not for me. Don't care. That said, this brings us to a speech from Donald Trump. Now, we don't have the speech yet because it occurred after the show started airing. Trump said, quote, "Instead of taxing our citizens to enrich foreign nations, we should be tariffing and taxing foreign nations to enrich our citizens." Suggested that he would like to end the income tax and replace it instead with tariffs. Now, that would do a couple of things here. First of all, is the income tax a good thing? No, not at all. You are taxed on your income, and then you are taxed again when you try to go and purchase something. Kind of gross. In fact, not just kind of gross, it is gross. The income tax is and has been theft. It is ridiculous. The government taxes you on the property you already own, the property that you spend your income on and then taxes you on the income itself. It's kind of gross. Now, taxing tariffs would essentially turn the United States into a consumption tax system, which would be more expensive in some cases, but would be offset by not having to pay an income tax. Could the United States move to function in that way again? Feasibly. Feasibly, the United States could work towards that again. Do I think that Trump is actually going to accomplish it? I mean, a couple of weeks ago, I probably would have just said no. But given how Trump is moving so far, I mean, a slim majority in the House and a lot of states who likely would just vote against anything Donald Trump said ever would mean that it would be really unlikely for an amendment to the Constitution, which you would need to abolish the income tax. I'm not really sure that that would go through at that point, but if you told me a couple of months ago that we would see a bunch of deportation flights headed out of the country, the United States military dispatched to the border, and world leaders caving immediately at the slightest amount of pressure from Donald Trump tweeting from his golf cart, and that Donald Trump himself would have been working for like 6 or 7 days straight, pimp smacking Democrats to their face in a round table or square table discussion in Los Angeles, I don't know if I'd have believed you. But here we are. And so, you know what? Donald Trump says he can abolish the income tax and replace it with tariffs. I tell you what, at this point, it doesn't matter necessarily whether I do or do not believe you. At this point, I'm willing to hear you out. I'm willing to hear you out because, hey, so far, things seem to have been working out just fine. And if it means that in the process, I will have the distinct privilege of hearing Selena Gomez or Anna Navarro or Margaret Brennan or insert whatever, AOC, Pramila Jayapal, crying on national television about how inhumane it would be to get rid of the income tax. I tell you what, I'm here for it on principle. I am all for watching the absolute hilarity of 4 years of just downpour crying. And the best part is, and this is a case that I'm currently making in an article that I really should turn in before my editor-in-chief chucks a folding chair at me. I'm not quite sure that those in the legacy media have figured out yet that the downturn in ratings, that the lack of web page views, that the abysmal absence of engagement with their traditional media roles, they haven't quite figured out this isn't temporary. By completely shredding their credibility throughout the COVID era, throughout the we promise Biden is doing cartwheels behind closed doors and doing amazing mathematical equations nonsense, by completely destroying their credibility, including with illegal immigration. Oh, well, only like five people have ever been killed by illegal immigrants, or as, funnily enough, as the individual over on ABC said to Vance during the election cycle, I mean, it's only like one apartment complex that was taken over by a Venezuela gang. By downplaying real issues that Americans are facing, I gotta tell you, I'm just not seeing the public running back to the mainstream media who screwed them over so many times repeatedly. Which brings me to the last little bit of bonus tonus here, which is answering a question that I just don't think can wait until mail time. This is actually from a friend of mine, at least I think, who is a Democrat who is very grumpy, and he said, Trump said he was running on lowering prices. So where are the prices lowering, Tony? Tell me that. You know what? Donald Trump was lying all along. Why are the prices not low? How come I can't go buy a house for $50 right now? Okay, let's address that. Let's have that conversation. Because, I'm going to level with you, it's been 5 business days, now 6 business days since Trump took office. There is not a situation whatsoever, except for the executive order to release the petroleum reserve, in which prices on any series of goods can be dropped immediately. There isn't. By the way, if you haven't figured out at this point that in a lot of cases, Donald Trump speaks in hyperbole, I don't know what to tell you. Now, you may not like that. You may say, well, you shouldn't speak in hyperbole. Okay, you're about like 27 years late on that one. But let's take it at measure. What is Donald Trump going to do to lower the price of eggs? Eggs are really expensive right now. And is it because of avian bird flu? Is it because of inflation? What's going on? Guys, eggs are expensive for a vast number of reasons. However, if you want to lower the price of eggs, I'm going to tell you here right now how you can lower the price of eggs. Right now, in most cities and suburbs in the United States, it is illegal to own chickens. Also, there are a lot of FDA standards on chickens that are ridiculous. That's not the R word I wanted to use. That's the R word I'm going to use. Ridiculous. The FDA should not have standards on the eggs that you can raise and sell. It's silly. Also, guess what? You shouldn't need a license to sell eggs. You should need to get some type of special permit from your city or your county or your state government or the federal government to go out and sell eggs. You want to sell eggs? Fine. You know what happens if you sell me an egg and the egg's awful? I'm not going to buy eggs from you again. If I crack open the egg and the egg is green and covered in pus, guess what? I ain't buying eggs from you again. You sell eggs? Good, great. I'll buy more eggs from you. This is not difficult, ladies and gentlemen. Chickens, they're kind of easy to make. You get laying hens when they are bred by the correct kind of rooster, who then give you more laying hens. I mean, there are literally entire college programs devoted to livestock genetics. I know, I live in a state that has one of those colleges. And every conversation that I have with any of these individuals are quite simply boiled down to, why is the federal government telling me how I can and can't sell my eggs? Now, you know, if we also stopped the arson that is burning down egg collection and sorting places and also large hatcheries and things, I think that would probably be effective as well. But the story of the Maury is that the government should not be telling anyone how or when they can buy or sell goods. That is silly. Once it is within the borders of the United States, the government should have no say whatsoever on who I'm selling eggs to, or how many eggs I'm allowed to sell, or how many chickens I'm allowed to have in this particular area. So that is a little bit of bonus tonus to talk about. And just as a short, this is anecdotal. I haven't released any reports. We do not have a consumer price index yet for January. Only December is out. But it should be said that there is some anecdotal data that some prices are already beginning to come down because of a lack of regulation by Trump issuing a series of executive orders which reduce the government's power to enforce regulations on the books at the moment. But because that's anecdotal, I'm not going to give you a 15-minute lecture about why I saw certain prices down a little bit. Correlate that to something that I could be wrong about because it's an anecdote. That said, that'll about wrap it up. We'll be back tomorrow for another episode. Thanks very much for tuning in, whether you're tuning in on the radio, on the TV, on our syndication network, or on the live streams on X or on YouTube. It's a blast to be with you. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Take care.